the original 8 gym leaders from the Pokemon Blue, Red, and Green versions. In the original game, there were only 6: Water, Fighting, Grass, Psychic, Lightning, and Fire. Machop, it is a fighting type. Aaron, it's a little bit more further along from the Kanto Pokemon, but he is a metal type. Houndour, this is from the Neo Genesis set, is a darkness type Pokemon. Now that you know the basics, it's time to fill in the rest before we start our first game. This second session goes over the gameplay and rules of the Pokemon trading card game. There's a lot to get into. Let's not waste any time and we'll get right into it. Okay, guys, in this particular video, we're going to be doing a little bit of a more of an academic type format. I have this PowerPoint type program that we're going to be just using this to go over the quick ins and outs of the game, and hopefully we can get as much information to you guys as possible in a short amount of time. What you see here is a basic layout of the entire field of play. Your side would probably be the red side or the white side, whichever. I mean, it's your preference. And your opponent's side will be on the opposite side of the thing. So here I've labeled this is where your deck goes, and we're gonna go ahead and do that real quick. I've already put aside some notes here. What's in a deck? All decks are 60 cards, no more, no less. It must be exactly 60 cards. Your deck must contain at least one basic Pokemon because obviously you're not going to win the game or even be able to play the game without a basic Pokemon card in your hand. Come on. Each deck must contain at least one basic energy card, obviously, because without an energy card, almost all the cards in the entire game, with a few exceptions, can't even attack. So it's pointless. It's not going to win. In my experience, granted, there's upon thousands of different opinions about what kind of deck or how to create a deck. Eventually, you will find your own unique perspective and way to do it. But from my perspective, a good basic deck contains 22 basic energy cards, 18 Pokemon cards that includes basics and evolution cards, and 20 trainer cards. I usually mix. I usually try to do for a basic deck. You choose one type of energy. We went over the basic energy types in the last video. Select one of those and bring into the mix a few of the colorless Pokemon too that any of the energies will work for. So something like that works well. Now, as you get better at constructing your deck, mix and match as you please. Just have fun with it. I mean, half the fun is constructing a deck that you think is going to work and then playing with it. That's the whole point of this video, is to teach you guys how to play it so we can actually do that. And that's what I'm planning on doing in the next videos after this series is done, is to actually just play the game and have you guys join me as we're doing it. So mix and match as you please. Carefully watch which energy cards you place in your deck. I have seen many examples where you have let's say a steel or metal type Pokemon and has fire type attacks. You gotta watch, make sure that it's fire energy you're using, not metal. Because if you're using metal and the Pokemon requires fire energy, you're out of luck. So you gotta watch for that. Just watch out for that as you go on. Okay, so next, right underneath the deck is going to be your discard pile. That's where going to be where all the stuff that you use, all the Pokemon that are defeated on your side go. I mean, in Yu-Gi-Oh, that's your graveyard. I believe Magic Gathering also does, as there's also labels as the graveyard. It's basically just the pile where the cards you're not using anymore, you already used, they're all done. That's where they go. Now, this field here, this field of 6 on each side, those are where your prize cards go. During the beginning of the game, after you have to make sure, we're going to go over a little bit more of the gameplay aspects here in a little bit, but this is where 6 of your cards go to where when you defeat your opponent's Pokemon, you get one of those cards back and you put it in your hand. Sometimes I cannot tell you how many times I've run into a situation where your best card happens to be one of those six, and you pull that thing up and you want to scream, but you got to keep your poker face on to make sure you don't let your opponent know that you just picked the haymaker in your deck. So so don't worry about that. We're moving on here. So so prizes. So it kind of segues into the next thing. How do you win the game? Let's face it, it's a game. And despite how fun it might be and the camaraderie you get with playing with other people, in the end, it's a game and you want to win. So let's find out how you do it. How do you win? As we just mentioned, those prizes. You take all six of your opponent's prizes. You win the game. Another way you win is if you defeat your opponent's last Pokemon and they have no more spare Pokemon left before you. I mean, you could be the very first prize. I mean, they could be completely having a run of bad luck and have only one basic Pokemon in the front spot, and you defeat them. Game over. That's just simple as that. The other way is you get through all 60 cards of your deck. Your opponent does, and at the beginning of their next turn, if they don't have a card to draw into their hand from the deck, they lose. So those are the three ways: one, two, and three. It seems simple, but getting to that step can be a little complicated. But we'll get into that here in a little bit. Okay, so as I said before, here are your prizes. Now these five spots are known as your bench. Um, the Pokemon that are literally just sitting there waiting idle to get into the action. Um, okay, so I just want to play the game. Enough with this setup, man. Let's just get into it. Let's do it. So here's how we start setting up the game. So we're going to flip a coin at the beginning of the game to see who goes first. Whoever calls it, that's usually just generally up to you and your opponent. Um, then whoever decides to go first, that you keep that in mind for a minute. You draw 7 cards from your deck, and then you will place one basic Pokemon card, and it has to say basic on the Pokemon card. There is a whole bunch of new different types of cards: Pokemon EX, Pokemon V, and a lot of these things, there may be evolutions that might confuse you at first because you're thinking, well, this is an evolution. Not a basic card. Just check to make sure it says basic on the card. You place one basic Pokemon on the field in the active Pokemon spot. That's this one right here, face down. You do not reveal the card yet to your opponent. If you have any other basics in your hand, place them on your bench right here. Place them on the bench face down. Keep them all face down. Do not reveal them to your opponent just yet. Remember, the bench only seats 5 Pokemon. Granted, you only have 7 cards, so it's pretty unlikely you'll get 7 basic Pokemon cards. But cool. I mean, if you do, that's great. But you know, you usually won't have more than 4 or 5 in the hand at any given time, unless you're just flush for the Pokemon cards. But anyway, I'm getting back out of it. So what happens if you don't get a basic Pokemon in your hand? If you don't, you have to shuffle your hand back into your deck, shuffle, and then draw another 7 cards. You will have to continue doing this until you get a basic Pokemon card to put in play. Each time you or your opponent, because I mean it could happen to where you both have to do this several times, but each time you do, the other player can draw an additional card into their hand before play starts. Each time, each time you redraw. Um, this is also known in the game as a mulligan in gameplay rules. If both players happen to mulligan at the exact same time, let's just say you and your opponent go once, go twice. Oh, cool! I've got cards. I'm going to put them down. But your opponent happens to do a third time, for example. Well, because your opponent did a third time, that means you get to draw one additional card. That's how it works. If you happen to mulligan and your opponent already has Pokemon on the field, then they can pull one card for that. If you do two and they already have basics on the field, then they draw two additional cards. So that's how it works. So once you've got all the basic Pokemon cards all laid on the field, then that's when you draw the six additional cards that become your prize cards. Go back to this. Go back. You just select six cards to put them on the prizes. Now, remember when we had you flip a coin to see who goes first. Now, you get to choose. Whoever wins that coin toss chooses who gets to go first. However, there are strategic advantages and disadvantages when actually playing the game, playing the first turn. And here's why. There are special rules about the first turn. You cannot evolve, you cannot attack, or you cannot play a supporter card. You can play any other trainer cards, but not supporter cards. It'll say it underneath. It's where it says trainer. It'll say supporter card. You make sure you cannot do any of those. You can do anything else, but you cannot do those three things. It's not fair to all of a sudden go from I have a Charmander on the field as my basic Pokemon card, and I just my first turn got the card, got my drew my card, and oh my god, I got a Charmeleon. I'm think I can evolve him right now to Charmeleon. One, that's not really fair to the other opponent because they haven't had a chance to draw their own card yet. One, that makes sense, but two, from a practical standpoint, you don't have enough energy to do any kind of evolved attacks, which usually generally costs at least two, maybe even three energy cards. So you have to be careful about that. Keep the first turn rules in mind when considering if you go first or second, if you win the coin toss. Remember to think strategically when you determine if you want to go first or second. Now, during a normal turn, other than the first turn, here's what the whole thing you can do. The very first thing is draw a card. Anytime, it's every turn, that's just automatic. You have to do it. There's no getting around it. You have to draw a card. And then you can perform any of the following actions in any order. You can place a new basic Pokemon card from your hand to the bench. I should say at this point, you should probably turn the cards over and when the first player draws their first card, you flip the cards over to reveal your Pokemon to each other. But I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but I just wanted to reiterate that. So sorry about that. Sorry to backtrack on you guys. Okay, so we're going to draw a card, and then you could perform any of the following actions in any order. Place a basic Pokemon card from your hand to the bench. If it's not the first turn, if it's the second turn, you can evolve a Pokemon card in play. You can't evolve a Pokemon card twice in the same turn. So you can't just go Charmander, Charmander, Charizard, boom, I'm already fully powered. Oh, and you have this guy, ready to rock and roll. No, you can only evolve once per turn. And it also says there, as we just explained before, you cannot evolve during the first turn, making it, like I said, it's an unfair advantage to the other player playing second. Now you can attach a Pokemon card, attach an energy card to any Pokemon card and play one per turn. Now, there are special Pokemon powers. Off the top of my head, there's Blastoise from the base set that allows you is a special power that allows you to play as many as you want. I mean, it depends. I mean, there's a more recent one. I think it's a Charizard EX that allows you to one fire energy card equals two energy card or fire energy cards or the game is very, very, very nuanced. But anyways, this is the basic stuff. You attach one energy card to a Pokemon to play. End of story. Now you can play a trainer card. No limit to how many trainer cards you can play. Pay attention to what it says on the card because some will say, well, after you play this, you can't play anymore or something like that. However, you can only play one supporter card per turn. It'll actually say that on the card, but you can only play one supporter card per turn. You can also retreat your active Pokemon. On each individual Pokemon card, there's a retreat cost at the very bottom of the card, and it's in colorless, denoting how many basic energy cards you must discard, discard, back to the discard pile, in order to pull the Pokemon back to your bench, and then you can select another Pokemon to go into the active Pokemon spot to face your opponent. You can do that only once per turn. And then you can use your Pokemon abilities, like I just mentioned, in the case of Blastoise or Charizard EX or whatever. There's one that says you can, once during your turn, you can select an additional card or pull basic energy cards from your discard pile, a whole bunch of different things, but you can use them however much you want, just paying attention to what it says on the card because you have to follow that to the letter. And then at the very end of your turn, attack. That's that is if you have enough energy for it to um, and energy to actually attack your Pokemon. So if your Pokemon has 2 fire energy to attack your Pokemon to do X amount of damage, then you must have 2 attached to the Pokemon. So you must have all that squared away. Now, during the course of the game, you're going to come across several status effects, just like in the video game. Asleep, paralyzed, confused, poisoned, and burned. Um, I know I just said a heap full of words there. We're going to go through them one at a time, so don't worry. We're just go through these one at a time, and hopefully, when we're done with this, we can go back and go, this makes sense now. And like I said, we're going to go through when we do our gameplay. We may not go through all these status effects right away, but through the course of our gameplay, we will eventually touch on all of these. Um, so the first one is going to be asleep. If your active Pokemon is asleep due to an infect or an attack, you have to turn your Pokemon card to the left. Before each turn begins, it's also known as during Pokemon checkup, which is like it's the mid stage in between turns. That's pretty much all it describes. It's just that a phase that's in between the turns before your opponent, at the end of your turn before the next turn for your opponent. That's the time when this checkup begins. So you have to flip a coin to determine whether your Pokemon wakes up. If it's heads, the Pokemon wakes up, and you put the card back to its original position, forward facing. Um, and you can attack or retreat or whatever as if the Pokemon the attack had no effect other than damage. Um, there are if it's tails, the Pokemon stays asleep and you can't attack or retreat at all. It's just sitting there. It's like a Snorlax. You can't do anything with it. However, there are other cards like trainer cards or evolve. You can evolve a Pokemon. This Pokemon, if let's say it's a Zubat, for example, and you want to, and then it's asleep currently. If you have a card in your hand to evolve the Golbat, keep in mind it's not. Of course, it won't be the first turn because the first turn you can't attack. But um, if you got a Golbat in play, evolve that sucker. The status effect will go away right then and there. No questions asked. Damage, however, stays put. So remember that. Damage always stays, no matter what. Now there are trainer cards, and there's also special energy cards like Full Heal Energy provides one colorless energy, but it also provides status effect healing from all 5 of the status effects. There's a whole bunch of different things, but there are things that can cancel that out. Let's see. Next, paralyzed. If your Pokemon is paralyzed, you turn the card to the right. I know my hand is, you may not see that, but um, if your Pokemon is paralyzed, turn the card to the right. During Pokemon checkup at the end of the turn, the Pokemon at the end of the next turn. So in this case, it's paralyzed. Your opponent plays, and then when it's your turn again, the Pokemon's back to normal. During your Pokemon's opponent's turn, you're paralyzed. There's nothing you can do. Period. End of story. Sorry. During your turn, that's it. At the end of your turn, it's back to normal. Then your opponent plays. Um, While paralyzed, the Pokemon cannot retreat or attack. Again, you can evolve it. That poor Zubat is paralyzed from an attack from your opponent. Play the Golbat. Bam, it's evolved. Status effect gone. Go for it. It cannot retreat or attack. Just like with Sleep, any other cards can cancel this, like I said, by evolving, or through affection trainer cards or special energy cards. Confused. Mostly, this is kind of the special thing of psychic types, where they can confuse the hell out of you. If it's Pokemon's confused, turn the card upside down. If it's confused, the Pokemon can attack. However, this is a big one. However, if you announce an attack, flip a coin. If heads, the attack works normally, but your Pokemon is still confused. No matter what, it's still confused. But if heads, it works normally. If tails, the Pokemon inflicts 30 damage to itself, and the attack does nothing to your opponent. A confused card can retreat, and by retreating, it actually cancels out the confusion. It'll bring your right back to normal. Other cards can, just like with Sleep and Paralyzed, other cards can heal this effect. You can, again, evolving gets rid of confusion and the other ones, and then other effects like trainer cards or special energy cards. Bad food and sunburns. Okay, so next status effect, burns. Um, there are a lot of fire type attacks that inflicts burns on Pokemon. It's if a Pokemon is burned during an effect, it'll receive the burn marker. There'll be like a special red coin. Um, if you buy certain packs or certain starter packs, they usually come with these little red coins as a little flame on it, and that's for burn purposes. Um, During in between turns, the burn Pokemon receives 20 damage of 20 HP of damage, and then you flip a coin. If it's heads, the Pokemon recovers from the burn, and the burn marker is removed. If tails, the status effect remains. Retreating, if you retreat the Pokemon, that burn goes away. And if you evolve a Pokemon, it goes away. Or effects of other cards, like trainer cards and special energy cards. Burns, unfortunately, cannot stack. So in a burn, you can't do one burn and then another burn to inflict 40 damage and another burn to inflict 60 damage. It doesn't work that way. One burn, one Pokemon. If you have um, If your opponent attacks you again, inflicts burn again, then the previous burn is wiped away, and then the new burn just takes its place. It's just the burns just don't stack, unfortunately. And last one, poisoned. Bad food. If a Pokemon's poisoned during the effect of an attack, it receives the poison marker. During Pokemon checkup, the poison Pokemon receives 10 damage of HP damage. If you retreat, the poison marker goes away. If you evolve, the poison marker goes away. Or effects of trainer cards will cancel the status effect. Again, poison, just like burn, don't stack. A new poison effect takes over when a new attack happens, and the other one just goes away.